His chest moved. I froze, my hand hovering over Luca Lucchese's body, certain I'd imagined it. But there, through the viewing glass, condensation forming from warm breath, the most feared crime lord in the city was breathing, and in 3 minutes, they'd cremate him alive. I pressed my palm against the glass. Warmth radiated back, not the cold of death, the heat of life, fading fast. The crematorium roared behind me, flames visible through the chamber doors. Mourners gathered 30 feet away, waiting for the final viewing before they burned him to ash. I was just the maid, the invisible black woman who'd spent 2 years preparing bodies at the Lucchese estate. Nobody looked at me, nobody ever did, but I'd seen something they'd all missed. His tattooed chest rising and falling, so faint it was almost imperceptible. The flutter of pulse beneath pale skin. Luca Lucchese wasn't dead, and I had seconds to decide, stay silent and let him burn, or scream and paint a target on my back that would never disappear. I threw myself at the crematorium doors. "Stop!" My voice cracked, desperate. "Stop! He's still breathing." Every head turned. Shock, anger, disbelief. Security guards grabbed my arms, calling me crazy, but I kept screaming until someone checked. Until they opened that viewing glass and felt what I'd felt, warmth, breath, the impossible heartbeat of a man pronounced dead 18 hours ago. That's when Luca Lucchese's dark eyes, deep brown with flecks of gold, snapped open. His tattooed hand shot out, grabbing the guard closest to him. And through the chaos, through the screaming and the shock, those eyes found mine and held. I'd just stopped a cremation, saved a man who should have been ash, exposed an assassination plot I didn't even know existed. My name is Cindy Anderson. I was invisible for 24 years, but that ended the moment Luca Lucchese opened his eyes and saw me. This is how I stopped a cremation and ignited an empire. Hey there, welcome back. If you're new and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Also, do check back tomorrow. I will be dropping another story even more interesting with crazier twists than this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let's get back to the story. The heat hit my face in waves as I stood before the industrial crematorium, 3 minutes from ignition. Through the reinforced viewing glass, Luca Lucchese lay perfectly still on the preparation trolley, dressed in an immaculate black suit, his dark hair slicked back from a face too beautiful for death. I'd been preparing bodies for 2 years. I knew what death looked like. This wasn't it. My hands trembled as I adjusted his collar one final time. Part of my duties as the estate maid. That's when I saw it, the smallest movement of his chest. A rise so subtle I thought exhaustion was playing tricks on my eyes. Then I saw the condensation, tiny droplets forming on the inside of the viewing glass, right where warm breath would create moisture, right where his mouth was. Dead men don't breathe. Dead men don't create condensation. I pressed my palm flat against the glass, and warmth radiated back. Not cold, not the temperature of refrigerated death. Warm. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would burst. Behind me, I could hear Salvatore Ricci, head of security, coordinating the final viewing. Families coming in 2 minutes. Then we proceed with cremation. 2 minutes. 120 seconds, until they slid Luca Lucchese into flames that would reduce him to ash and bone fragments. I looked at his throat, watched for movement, and there the faintest flutter beneath his skin where his pulse should be. He was alive. Barely, impossibly, but alive. I should have walked away, should have told myself I was wrong. I was just the maid, the invisible black woman who cleaned their floors and prepared their dead. Who was I to question doctors and family and the natural order of things? But I couldn't let someone burn alive, even if it cost me everything. I threw myself at the crematorium doors just as Salvatore moved to open them. "Stop!" The word tore from my throat, raw and desperate. "Stop! He's still breathing." Salvatore spun toward me, hand going to his weapon. "What did you say?" "He's alive! Look, there's condensation on the glass. His chest is moving." I was screaming now, not caring how I sounded. "Please, you have to check. He's still breathing." 2 guards grabbed my arms, pulling me back. "She's hysterical," one muttered. "Never seen a corpse before." "Probably. I work here." I struggled against their grip. "I've prepared 3 bodies. I know what death looks like. And this isn't it." Through the viewing gallery window, I saw the family pressing forward. Giuliana Lucchese, Luca's sister, her face a mask of confusion and hope. Beside her, Vittorio Bianchi, the consigliere, looked like he wanted me dead. Salvatore studied me for 3 agonizing seconds. His eyes cut to the viewing glass, to the tiny droplets of moisture still visible on the interior surface. "Check him," he ordered Dr. Fontana, who stood frozen in the doorway. "Now." The doctor scrambled forward, hands shaking as he pressed 2 fingers to Luca's neck. His face went white as snow. "Madonna Santa," he whispered. "There's a pulse, barely perceptible, maybe 15 beats per minute, but it's there." He pressed his stethoscope to Luca's chest, listening intently. Respirations, almost imperceptible. How is this possible? "I pronounced him dead 18 hours ago." "Open the panel," Salvatore barked. "Get him out of there." They pulled the viewing glass fully open. Heat from the waiting crematorium made everyone step back. Everyone except me. I was still trapped between guards, watching as they lifted Luca's body from the trolley. His head lolled to the side. Then his eyes snapped open. Not slowly, not peacefully. They opened like a drowning man breaking the surface, wild, unfocused, desperate. His tattooed hand shot out with shocking speed, grabbing the nearest guard Paolo by the throat. "Luca," Giuliana's voice carried through the glass, sharp with relief and terror. "Luca, you're safe." But he wasn't listening. His dark eyes, flecked with gold in the harsh light, swept the room, cataloging threats, searching for enemies. Then they landed on me, held. Everything else fell away. The chaos, the shouting, Dr. Fontana calling for equipment, Giuliana trying to get through the door. All of it background noise to the intensity of Luca Lucchese's gaze locked on my face. His grip on Paolo loosened. His lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then, rough as gravel, "You." Everyone went silent. "You. Who are you?" I couldn't speak. My tongue felt thick. My throat closed with terror and shock, and the dawning realization of what I'd just done. Salvatore stepped into his line of sight. "Boss, don't try to talk. You need her." Luca's voice was stronger now, carrying command even in its weakness. I asked her, "Who are you?" I forced words past my frozen lips. Cindy Anderson." My voice came out small. "Wrong. I'm just the maid who prepares the bodies." His gaze didn't waver. For a man who'd been moments from cremation, his stare was unnervingly focused. Assessing. Memorizing. Dr. Fontana worked quickly, checking vitals, barking orders. "Cardiac glycoside poisoning," he announced after several tense minutes. "It's the only explanation. Slows the heart and respiration to near-death levels. Mimics cardiac arrest perfectly." His voice shook. "Someone tried to cremate him alive before anyone realized he wasn't actually dead." The words hung in the air like smoke. Someone had poisoned Luca Lucchese. Someone had wanted him burned before anyone discovered the truth. "Salvatore." Luca never looked away from me. "Lock down the compound. No one leaves. No one. Someone tried to kill me, and they're still here." He took a shuddering breath. "And keep her close. She stays where I can see her." My heart stopped. "What? You saved my life, or you're part of the conspiracy?" His eyes narrowed, dark and dangerous. "Until I know which, Cindy Anderson, you're not going anywhere." Salvatore moved toward me, and I realized with crystalline clarity that I hadn't saved myself at all. I'd just walked into a cage, and I didn't know if the man inside it was my salvation or my executioner. The room they locked me in wasn't designed for comfort. Concrete walls painted institutional beige, a narrow bed with military corners, a single window reinforced with steel bars. Not a guest room, a holding cell dressed up just enough to maintain plausible deniability. I sat on the bed, my maid's uniform still damp with sweat from the heat of the crematorium, and tried to process what had just happened. I'd stopped a cremation, saved Luca Lucchese's life, and now I was a prisoner in the very estate where I'd worked for 2 years. The guard outside my door was silent, stone-faced, his hand resting on his weapon. An hour passed, maybe 2. Then the door opened, and Giuliana Lucchese walked in. She wore black, still mourning clothes for a brother who hadn't died, but somehow made them look predatory. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. "Convenient timing," she said without preamble. Her gaze raked over me like I was something she'd found on her shoe, the help-playing hero right before cremation. I stood on instinct, then hated myself for it. For making myself smaller. I wasn't. "You weren't what? Trying to save your own skin by making yourself indispensable?" She circled me slowly, a predator assessing prey. "Or maybe you knew exactly what you'd find. Maybe you're part of whatever conspiracy almost killed my brother. I work here, I said, forcing my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my throat. I've worked here for 2 years. I prepare bodies for viewing. That's all. That's all, she repeated mockingly. A black maid from nowhere, suddenly the hero of the hour. How fortunate for you. The casual racism landed like a slap. I'd heard it before, subtle, coded, wrapped in polite dismissal, but never this direct. Never from someone who literally held my freedom in her hands. Before I could respond, Vittorio Bianchi entered. Older than Giuliana, silver-haired and cold-eyed, the consigliere radiated authority that made her seem almost warm by comparison. Cindy Anderson, he said, consulting a tablet with clinical detachment. 24, born in Newark. Mother deceased 3 years ago. Cancer. Father unknown. His eyes lifted to mine, cold and calculating. Where'd you really come from? Who sent you? Nobody sent me. My hands clenched at my sides. My mother died when I was 21. I've been supporting myself and my brother ever since. Terrell, he's 19, studying engineering at community college. I work 3 jobs. Here, a cleaning service downtown, weekends at a diner in Hoboken. I'm barely keeping us afloat. I don't have time for conspiracies. 3 jobs. Juliana's smile was all edges. How dedicated. And yet you had time to notice what trained doctors missed. I wasn't trying to notice anything, I said, exhaustion making me reckless. I was doing my job, making sure everything looked right before. I swallowed hard. Before they turned on the crematorium, I saw condensation. I saw him breathing. What was I supposed to do? Let him burn? Vittorio studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded to the guard. Salvatore's running a full background check. Financial records, phone logs, known associates. If she's lying, we'll know within the hour. They left me alone again. Alone with my fear, and the terrible understanding of what "we'll know" really meant. Night fell. I couldn't sleep, even though exhaustion pulled at me like weights. The room had no clock, but I tracked time by the changing of the guards outside my door. 3 rotations. Maybe 9 hours. Around what I guessed was midnight, I heard it. A scream, distant but unmistakable, coming from somewhere below. Then another. Voices raised in anger. A sharp crack that might have been a gunshot or might have been something worse. They were interrogating people, torturing information out of whoever they suspected, finding out who poisoned Luca. And I was sitting in a room that might become my tomb if Salvatore's background check found anything at all that looked suspicious. I pressed my face against the barred window and tried not to cry. Tried not to think about Terrell, who depended on my paychecks to stay in school. About how he'd never know what happened to me if they decided I was a threat. Another scream echoed through the walls. I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still hear it. This was the world I'd stepped into. The world beneath the marble floors and expensive suits, where violence was currency and life was cheap. Morning came with the sound of the lock turning. I jerked upright from where I'd finally dozed on the bed, heart hammering against my ribs. Luca Lucchesi stood in the doorway. He looked different from the corpse I'd prepared yesterday. Alive, obviously, but more than that. He'd showered, dressed in dark jeans, and a black shirt that did nothing to hide the tattoos crawling up his neck. Italian script wound around his throat like a collar. A saint's face. Street Michael, I thought, emerged from beneath his collar, sword raised. More ink covered his hands, disappearing under his sleeves. His dark hair was still damp, slicked back from a face that was far more intimidating alive than it had been in death. His eyes, dark brown with those unsettling flecks of gold, studied me with unnerving intensity. And far more dangerous. He carried a tray. Coffee, toast, eggs. The absurdity of it would have made me laugh if I weren't so terrified. "You should eat," he said, setting the tray on the small table. His voice was still rough, damaged from whatever poison had nearly killed him. I brought it myself. Nobody else touched it, because he didn't trust anyone not to poison it. The implication hung heavy in the air. I didn't move. Couldn't. He pulled out the room's single chair and sat, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Salvatore confirmed your story. Everything checks out. You're exactly what you appear to be, a woman trying to survive, working herself to death to put her brother through school." Relief flooded through me so fast I felt dizzy. My legs went weak, and I sank back onto the bed. "But I still have questions," he continued. His dark eyes never left my face, cataloging every reaction, every micro-expression. "Why did you care whether I lived or died? You don't even know me." The question caught me off guard. Not accusatory. Genuinely confused, like the concept of someone caring about him was foreign, because I swallowed hard, finding words I'd never said out loud before. Because I've spent my whole life being treated like I don't matter, like I'm invisible, just another black face in service to people who don't see me as human. I know what it feels like to be nothing to everyone around you. My voice cracked. I couldn't just let someone burn alive. Even if everyone thought he was already dead. Even if you'd never have noticed me when you were living. Because every life matters. Even yours. Something shifted in his expression, not softening exactly. Men like Luca Lucchese didn't soften, but recognition. Like he'd seen something he hadn't expected. "I see you now," he said quietly. Then louder, with finality. "You stay here, under my protection, until we find who did this. You exposed an assassination plot, Cindy Anderson. That makes you either incredibly valuable or incredibly dangerous." He stood, moving to the door. "Either way, you're under my watch now. No one touches you without going through me first." It should have felt like protection. Instead, it felt like a different kind of cage, one with invisible bars made of obligation and debt, and the dangerous attention of a man who controlled life and death with equal ease. But as he paused in the doorway, looking back at me one last time, I realized something that terrified me more than the guards or the screams or the threat of death. For the first time in my life, someone actually saw me, and I didn't know if that was salvation or the worst thing that could have happened. 5 days in the compound taught me that being seen wasn't the blessing I'd imagined. They moved me to better quarters, actual guest room, private bathroom, a window without bars, but I was still a prisoner, still the outsider, still the black maid who'd somehow become important to their boss. The organization members made sure I knew it. "Must be nice," a woman muttered as I passed in the hallway, her voice just loud enough to hear. "Playing the hero card, getting special treatment." A soldier smirked when I entered the kitchen for coffee. "Boss keeping his pet close, huh? Wonder what you're doing to earn that protection." I kept my head down, stayed quiet, made myself small again, slipping back into old survival patterns. But the comments kept coming, each one a small cut that bled more than it should. On the 5th day, I was crossing the main courtyard when I heard it clearly. A soldier leaning against the fountain, talking to his buddy, not bothering to lower his voice. "Can't believe he's keeping that NN." He didn't finish the word. Luca appeared from nowhere. I hadn't even seen him coming, and his fist connected with the soldier's jaw with a crack that echoed off the marble walls. The man went down hard, blood pouring from his mouth, teeth scattered on the stone. "She's under my protection." Luca's voice was deadly quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded worse violence. He crouched beside the groaning man, grabbed him by the collar. "Next person disrespects her answers to me, personally. Are we clear?" The man nodded frantically, blood bubbling from his lips. Word spread fast after that. The insults stopped, at least where I could hear them. But the hostility didn't disappear. It just went underground, simmering in sideways glances and sudden silences when I entered rooms. I was causing problems, fracturing something that had been solid before I'd opened my mouth at that cremation. I heard them arguing 3 days later. I'd been looking for Salvatore. Luca wanted me to have a phone so I could check on Terrell, and Salvatore was supposed to arrange it. The office wing was quiet, and I'd almost reached Luca's door when I heard Vittorio's voice, raised in anger. "She's a distraction, and worse, she's black. You bring her deeper into the family, you'll fracture everything Papa built, everything we've stood for." I froze, my hand inches from the door handle. Giuliana's voice, colder than her brother's. "She doesn't belong in our world, Luca. Send her away with money and protection, but don't make her more than what she is. Don't let this gratitude turn into something that will destroy you." "What she is," Luca said, his voice like ice cracking, "is the reason I'm alive. That makes her more valuable than half the people in this organization." "You're not thinking clearly." Vittorio's frustration bled through every word. "I see how you look at her. This isn't about gratitude. It's about—" "Careful," Luca interrupted, and I could hear the threat beneath the single word. "Very careful, Vittorio." Silence, heavy and dangerous. Then Giuliana, softer but no less cutting. "She's not one of us. She never will be. And the longer you keep her here, the more people will question your judgment, question whether you're fit to lead." I should have left. Should have walked away before I heard more. Instead, I stood there, frozen, as they dissected my existence like I was a problem to be solved. When the conversation shifted to business names I didn't recognize, territories I didn't understand, I finally turned to flee and ran directly into Luca. He'd come out the side door, the one I hadn't been watching. His dark eyes, gold-flecked and intense, locked onto mine, and I saw the moment he realized I'd been listening. "How much did you hear?" His hand closed around my wrist, not hard, but firm. Inescapable. "Enough." My voice shook despite my best efforts. "Enough to know I should leave. Enough to know I'm causing you problems you don't need." He pulled me into his office through the side entrance, closing the door behind us. Vittorio and Juliana had left through the main door. I could hear their voices fading down the corridor. "You're not leaving," he said. "And it wasn't up for debate. Not until this is finished." "Why?" The word burst out of me, anger and fear and exhaustion all tangled together. "Because I'm useful? Because I saved you, and now you owe me? Because keeping me here proves something to them? Because—" He stopped, jaw clenching so hard I could see the muscle jump. His hands flexed at his sides like he was fighting the urge to reach for me. "Because when I look at you, I see someone who didn't have to give a damn about me but did anyway. In my world, Cindy, that doesn't exist. People care because they're paid to, because they're afraid not to, because there's something in it for them. But you," he shook his head, "you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. And you screamed anyway." The air between us felt electric. Dangerous. "I'm not some charity case for you to feel good about," I said, but my voice was weaker now. "I'm not your redemption project. I don't feel good about anything," he said, and stepped closer. Close enough that I could see every fleck of gold in his dark eyes, smell the sandalwood and smoke that clung to him. "But when you're in the room, I feel less like I'm already dead, less like I'm just going through motions, waiting for someone to finally put me in the ground for real." My breath caught. "Luca, tell me you don't feel it." His voice dropped to barely a whisper, rough with something that sounded like desperation. "Tell me you don't feel this thing between us, and I'll arrange for you to leave tonight. Money, new identity, protection for you and your brother, safety. Just tell me you don't feel it." I couldn't. God help me. I couldn't lie. "This is insane," I whispered. "This can't happen. I know." He raised his hand, hovering near my face but not quite touching, like he was afraid the contact would burn him. "Tell me to stop." Instead, I closed the distance and kissed him. It was desperate. Forbidden. Wrong in every way that mattered, wrong because of who we were, what we were, the impossible gulf between his world and mine. His hands came up to cut my face, gentle despite the violence I knew they were capable of. My fingers tangled in his shirt, pulling him closer, needing to feel that he was real, alive, here. When we broke apart, we were both shaking. "This is insane," he repeated, but his forehead rested against mine. "We can't." "Then tell me to leave," I said, finding my voice for the first time, finding my power. "Tell me you don't want this." He couldn't. And in that moment, in his silence, I realized something that changed everything. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't nothing. I was seen, wanted, chosen, and even if it destroyed us both, I wasn't ready to give that up. Salvatore found it on the 6th day. I was in Luca's office. I'd started spending time there, ostensibly helping organize files, but really just wanting to be near him when Salvatore burst through the door without knocking. "We have him." He threw a tablet onto Luca's desk, the screen showing bank records, communications, purchase histories. "Adriano Gallo, your underboss." The name hung in the air like poison. I watched Luca's face go blank, that terrifying emptiness that I'd learned preceded violence. "Show me." Salvatore swiped through screens with practiced efficiency. "Offshore accounts opened 3 weeks before your death. $2 million transferred from the Torino family. They've been circling our territory for months, waiting for weakness. And the clincher, purchase records for monk's hood extract. That's where the cardiac glycoside came from. He bought it using a shell company, but we traced it back. Adriano." Luca's voice was soft, deadly. "I trusted him with my life. He counted on that." Salvatore pulled up a map on the tablet. "He's fled. Safe house in the Bronx. He's got maybe 6 soldiers with him. Knows we're coming." Luca stood, already moving toward the weapons cabinet built into the office wall. "Mobilize everyone. I want him alive long enough to explain why." "Boss," Salvatore hesitated. "It's a trap. Has to be. He wants you to come after him angry, not thinking clearly. Then I'll oblige him." Luca checked the magazine of his gun with practiced ease. the motion so familiar it was almost casual. "Get the men ready. We leave in 20 minutes." I watched from my corner of the room as the compound transformed into a war zone. Men arming themselves with military precision, checking equipment, moving with lethal purpose. This wasn't the world of marble floors and expensive suits. This was the violence underneath, raw and undeniable. Juliana found me as I stood frozen in the hallway, watching the preparations. "Don't try to stop him," she said quietly. "He has to do this himself. It's about more than revenge. It's about showing the organization that betrayal has consequences." "I know." But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. She studied me for a long moment, something softening in her sharp features. "You care about him." "Yes." "Don't take her with you into this," she called to Luca as he passed, armed and dangerous. "She's not built for our world." Luca paused, his eyes dark with gold flecks catching the light finding mine across the chaos. "She's built for more than you give her credit for." But he didn't invite me along, didn't ask me to witness what he was about to do. He just crossed to me, cupped my face briefly, and pressed his lips to my forehead. "Stay with Salvatore," he whispered. "I'll come back to you." Then he was gone, and I watched through the window as the convoy pulled out. 4 black SUVs, heavily armed, disappearing into the late afternoon shadows. Hours crawled by. Salvatore stationed guards throughout the estate, everyone on high alert. The tension was palpable. You could taste it in the air, metallic like blood. Nobody spoke. Nobody relaxed. We all just waited. I found myself walking without conscious thought to the small chapel on the grounds. I hadn't prayed since my mother died, lost faith somewhere between her diagnosis and the funeral I'd paid for by selling everything we owned. But I sat in the silence anyway, staring at the altar with its suffering Christ, trying not to imagine Luca bleeding out in some Bronx safe house. "You really love him, don't you?" Juliana's voice startled me. She slid into the pew beside me, still elegant even in her worry. "Even knowing what he is. What he does." "Yes. No point lying. He's going to get you killed." She said it without malice. Just fact, delivered with the certainty of someone who'd lived in this world her whole life. "Or you're going to destroy him. There's no in-between for people like us. No middle ground. Only extremes." I looked at her finally, really looked at her. Saw the worry beneath the cold exterior, the love for her brother that she couldn't quite hide. "Maybe there doesn't need to be an in-between," I said. "Maybe the extremes are where we're supposed to live. Where life actually happens instead of just passing us by." She almost smiled. Almost. My phone buzzed, the one Salvatore had finally given me yesterday. Luca's name on the screen. I answered with shaking hands. "It's done." His voice was rough, tired, but alive. "Adriano's dead. Coming home." Relief hit me so hard I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Cindy?" "I'm here," I managed, pressing my hand to my mouth to hold back the sob. "I'm here. Come home." The convoy returned after midnight. I was waiting in the courtyard, unable to stay inside any longer, needing to see him with my own eyes. Luca emerged from the lead SUV, and my breath caught in my throat. Blood. So much blood covering his shirt, his hands, spatters across his face and neck. His knuckles were split open, his shirt torn, and he moved stiffly, favoring his left side. But he was whole, alive. The entire compound watched as he walked directly to me, ignoring Salvatore's attempt to brief him, ignoring Juliana's concern about his injuries. His eyes dark brown with gold catching the courtyard lights locked on mine like I was the only thing anchoring him to humanity. He stopped inches away, close enough that I could smell the copper tang of blood, see the darkness in his eyes that came from taking a life. "I need you to see me," he said, and his voice cracked. "All of me. What I just did. What I'm capable of. What I did to him before he died." He swallowed hard. "I need you to tell me if you can live with it." I saw the blood. Smelled it. Saw the darkness in his eyes that came from crossing lines that could never be uncrossed. From torturing a man he'd once trusted. From pulling the trigger himself instead of delegating it to someone else. I saw all of it. And I stepped forward anyway. "I see you, Luca Lucchesi." I reached up, cupping his face despite the blood, despite the watching eyes, despite everything. "And I'm still here." He broke, pulled me against him so hard I felt his heart hammering, his hands shaking as they gripped me, like I was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. "I love you," he whispered against my hair, so quiet only I could hear. "I don't know when it happened, somewhere between waking up and finding you there in this moment. But I love you, Cindy, and that terrifies me more than any enemy ever has. I love you too." The words felt like falling, like jumping off a cliff with no idea where I'd land. Even though I shouldn't. Even though everyone will say I'm insane. Even though loving you means accepting all of this. The violence, the blood, the darkness. I love you anyway. He kissed me there, in front of everyone, blood and all, claiming me, choosing me, despite every rational reason not to. Later, in his private quarters, after he'd showered away the blood and stood before me clean but still shaking, I pulled him to me. "You should run," he said against my skin as I undressed him, tended to his bruised ribs. "While you still can, before you're in too deep to escape." Instead, I kissed him. Claimed him back. Let him take me to bed and show me with his body what words couldn't capture, that we were both terrified, both falling, both choosing this impossible thing despite knowing the cost. In the aftermath, tangled in his sheets, his hand tracing patterns on my spine, I realized something. I'd spent my whole life being invisible, safe in my smallness. But this being seen, being chosen, being loved by a man who'd just killed for his empire, this was living. Really, truly living. Even if it destroyed me, I'd rather burn bright than fade away unseen. And from the way Luca held me, like I was the only solid thing in his world, I knew he felt the same. Morning light cut through the curtains, turning Luca's bedroom golden. I woke slowly, awareness returning in pieces. Silk sheets against my bare skin, the weight of his arm across my waist, the steady rhythm of his breathing behind me. I shifted carefully, not wanting to wake him, and that's when I really saw the tattoos in daylight. In darkness last night, I'd felt them under my fingers, raised lines of ink, the texture of his story written on his skin. But now, in morning light, I could read them. Italian script wound around his ribs. Chi si fa pecora. Il lupo se lo mangia. He who makes himself a sheep will be eaten by wolves. Street Michael covered his left shoulder blade, sword raised against a demon twisted in agony. Names scattered across his chest and arms, dates beside some. Mattia 09, Giovanni 15, Lorenzo 18. The dead, I realized. Men he'd lost, men he'd killed, men who mattered one way or another. My father gave me the first one when I was 16. Luca's voice startled me. His eyes were open, watching me study him, dark brown with those flecks of gold catching the morning light. Said a man should wear his sins where he can see them. Said if you're going to do terrible things, you should at least have the courage to remember them. And the names? People who mattered, one way or another. His hand traced the curve of my hip, featherlight. Then, without preamble, "I want to marry you." I went still. "What?" "I want you as my wife." He said it like it was simple, like the world wasn't designed to destroy exactly this. "I want everyone to know you're mine, that you're untouchable, that touching you means war." I sat up, pulling the sheet with me. "Luca, people will try to kill us. Your family already thinks I'm a problem. And I gestured between us. At the obvious difference that everyone else saw first. The world doesn't exactly celebrate this. Let them try." He sat up too, and the morning light caught every fleck of gold in his dark eyes. "I've been dying slowly for years, Cindy. Going through motions, building an empire on fear and blood and nothing else. Power for power's sake. You made me want to live. Actually live, not just survive. So marry me. Choose this chaos with me." I should have said no. Should have listed every rational objection. The racism, the violence, the impossibility of a black maid becoming a mafia wife, the target it would paint on both our backs, the fractures it would cause in his organization. Instead, I heard myself say, "Yes." His smile transformed his face, made him look younger, almost innocent, like the boy he might have been before violence carved him into a weapon. "Yes, I'll marry you, Luca Lucchesi." I cupped his face, feeling the scratch of his morning stubble. Even though it's insane, even though we'll probably end up dead because of it, even though everyone will say I'm crazy, or a gold digger, or worse, they can say whatever they want. He kissed me, slow and deep, a promise sealed in breath and want. "I'm calling a family meeting. Now, before I lose my nerve." 20 minutes later, the conference room was packed. Family, soldiers, high-ranking members of the organization. Juliana sat at the far end, her expression carefully neutral. Vittorio stood by the window, jaw already tight with disapproval. Luca didn't waste time on preamble, didn't build up to it, just said it, "I'm getting married." to Cindy Anderson. 1 week from today, the room exploded. Vittorio turned from the window, face flushed red. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. Vittorio caught himself, but everyone knew what he'd been about to say, what he was thinking. She's not one of us. This will fracture everything. The other families won't stand for it. I'm not asking them to stand for it. I'm informing them. Luca, think about what you're doing. Juliana spoke carefully, diplomatically. The other families, the old guard, they won't accept this. An interracial marriage at this level? It's unprecedented. Some will see it as weakness, others as betrayal of tradition. They can adjust or die. I don't particularly care which. 3 soldiers stood up and walked out. Just left, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The door closing behind them felt final. More whispers. More shocked faces. I wanted to sink into the floor, disappear like I'd spent my life doing. But Luca's hand found mine under the table, solid and warm. Salvatore cleared his throat. The room went quiet, everyone waiting to see which way the head of security would fall. Boss, he said slowly, if this is your choice, we stand with you. It wasn't enthusiastic, wasn't wholehearted, but it was something. Slowly, cautiously, others nodded. Not all, maybe not even half, but enough to matter, enough to prevent outright rebellion. Luca's hand squeezed mine under the table. His voice dropped, meant only for me. This is what loving me costs. Fractured loyalty, death threats, a life spent watching your back, 3/4 of the organization questioning whether I'm fit to lead. Are you sure? I thought about invisibility, about safety, about a life lived small and quiet and unseen, about going back to being nothing to everyone. I've never been more sure of anything. I squeezed his hand back. You don't get to scare me away. Later, in his office, while he was already making calls, arranging security, legal documents, protection details, I called Terrell from Luca's phone. He answered on the second ring. Cindy, I've been worried. You haven't called in over a week. What's going on? I know. I'm sorry. How did I explain this? How did I tell my 19-year-old brother that his sister was marrying a crime lord? I'm getting married. Silence. Then, what? To who? His name is Luca. I met him at work. It's fast, I know, but Terrell, my voice cracked. He sees me, really sees me, not just as the maid or the help or the black girl serving coffee. He sees me. Another pause. Is he good to you? Yes. Is he white? I hesitated. Yes. And this is what you want? Not what you feel like you have to do? It's what I want. More than I've ever wanted anything. Then I'm happy for you, sis. Terrell's voice softened. You deserve to be happy. I don't care who he is or what color he is or any of it. You've spent your whole life taking care of me, working yourself to death so I could go to school. It's about time someone took care of you. Tears burned my eyes. Thank you. Also, Terrell added, and I could hear the protective edge enter his voice. If he hurts you, I'll kill him myself. Engineering students know chemistry, just so we're clear. I laughed through the tears. Noted. And Terrell? You're walking me down the aisle. When I hung up, Luca was watching me from across the office, his dark eyes soft. Your brother sounds protective. He is. He's the only family I have left. Not anymore. Luca pulled me into his arms. You have me now. Juliana, once she stops being terrified. Salvatore. We're building something, Cindy. A family that's chosen, not just born into. One that's built on something more than blood and fear. I looked up at him, this man who'd been dead less than 2 weeks ago, who'd killed just days before, who was offering me everything despite the cost. Then let's build it, I said, together. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere, even if that somewhere was the eye of a storm. The dress hung in my room like a promise and a threat. White silk, custom made in 3 impossible days by a designer who'd flown in from Milan and looked at me with barely disguised curiosity. It fit like it had been painted on, elegant and simple, making me look like someone I barely recognized in the mirror. A queen, Juliana had said when she'd helped me into it that morning. Her voice had been carefully neutral, but her hands had been gentle as she'd fastened the tiny buttons up my spine. Now, standing at the chapel entrance with Terrell beside me, I felt the weight of what I was about to do settle over my shoulders like a crown of thorns. You sure about this? Terrell whispered. He looked impossibly young in his borrowed suit, barely 19, but trying so hard to be the man who gave me away. It's not too late to run. I've got the car keys. We could be in Canada by morning. Terrified, I admitted. But sure. He squeezed my hand. Mom would have loved seeing you this happy. Would have loved seeing you refuse to make yourself small for anyone. The chapel doors opened. It was small, maybe 40 people, half of them visibly armed. Some families had refused to attend. A statement about interracial unions, about maintaining purity, about tradition, about not fracturing the old alliances that had kept the peace for decades. But enough had come. Out of respect. Out of fear. Out of morbid curiosity about the black maid who'd somehow captured Luca Lucchese's heart. And there he was, at the altar, and my breath stopped. All black suit, shirt, even his tie. His tattoos were visible above his collar, crawling up his neck like art and sin combined. His dark hair was slicked back, his face clean-shaven, and his eyes dark brown with flecks of gold locked on me, with an intensity that made everything else fall away. He looked at me like I was salvation. Like I was the only thing keeping him from falling back into that darkness that had almost consumed him. I walked down that aisle with my head high, Terrell's arm steady in mine, refusing to shrink under the stairs. Under the whispers I could hear even through the organ music, under the weight of disapproval that pressed against me from all sides. When I reached him, Luca took my hands. His were shaking slightly. "You came," he whispered. "Did you think I wouldn't?" I was terrified you'd realize this was insane and run. I did realize it's insane. I smiled through my tears. I came anyway. Father Benedetto cleared his throat. He was old, conflicted. I could see it in the tightness around his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly on his Bible but loyal to the Lucchese family above his own comfort. "We are gathered here today," he began. The ceremony blurred. I heard the words holy matrimony, joining together, love and honor, till death do us part, but all I could focus on was Luca's hands holding mine, his thumb tracing circles on my skin like he needed the physical reminder I was real. Then came the vows, not traditional. Luca had insisted we write our own. "I promise to protect you with my life," Luca said, his voice carrying through the chapel, strong and certain. "To see you always, when the world tries to make you invisible. To build something with you that's more than blood and fear. To choose you every day, even when it costs me everything." My turn. My voice shook but held strong. "I promise to stand with you in the darkness, to be your partner, your equal, to love you even when the world says I shouldn't, to never make myself small again, to choose you every day, knowing exactly what that choice means." Then by the power vested in me, Father Benedetto's voice was resigned but final. "I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Luca pulled me close, one hand sliding into my hair, the other around my waist. He kissed me like we were alone. Like there weren't 40 people watching, like this wasn't a political statement and a declaration of war all wrapped into one ceremony. Tender, possessive, mine. The reception was held in the main ballroom, the same room where they'd almost cremated him just 2 weeks ago, now transformed with white flowers and candlelight. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Tense silence mixed with forced celebration. Some families whispered behind their hands, their disapproval barely masked. Others stayed away from me entirely, like my presence might contaminate them. But I danced with Luca in the center of that ballroom, his arms around me, ignoring every stare and whisper. "They hate this," I murmured against his shoulder. "Let them." He pulled me closer. "You're mine now, legally, completely, Mrs. Cindy Lucchese. Let them choke on it." Juliana approached as the song ended. She wore black, still mourning colors for what? I didn't know. For the organization as she'd known it. Maybe. Her expression was stiff, formal, but not actively hostile. "You're family now," she said. "Not warm, but not cold either. That means I protect you, even if I don't understand this. Even if I think my brother is making a mistake that could cost him everything. I'm not asking you to understand." I met her eyes. "Just to respect that your brother chose me, that I'm here, that I'm not going anywhere." Something shifted in her face, not quite approval, but acknowledgement. "He did choose you, and in this family, we honor loyalty above everything else. You saved his life. That has to count for something." It wasn't much, but it was something. Luca whisked me away before the reception ended, his patience for performing for the organization exhausted. "I'm done pretending for them," he said, pulling me toward a waiting car. "I want you to myself." The villa on the Amalfi coast was stunning. White stone and blue water, perched on cliffs that dropped away to the Mediterranean. Completely private, completely his. I bought it years ago, he said as we stood on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the water gold and red. Thought maybe someday I'd want to disappear. Be someone other than Luca Lucchese, someone who hadn't killed his first man at 15. And now? Now I want to build something here. With you. He turned to me, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before, his dark eyes with their gold flecks soft in the fading light. I want to be more than what my father made me. More than just the heir to violence and fear. I want to be someone worthy of you. 3 days we spent there, hidden from the world. Learning each other beyond crisis and adrenaline. Beyond death and blood and impossible choices. He told me about his childhood, his brutal father, who'd trained him like a weapon. The violence he'd witnessed before he was old enough to understand it. The first time he'd killed someone at 15 because his father had demanded it as proof of loyalty. The weight of an empire he'd never asked for but couldn't escape. I told him about my mother's death. The poverty that had defined my entire adult life. The systemic racism that had taught me to be invisible. To make myself small. To accept less. Because expecting more was dangerous for someone like me. The fear that had kept me trapped in service work even though I'd dreamed of college, of building something of my own. We built a foundation in vulnerability, in honesty, in the quiet moments between passion, when we were just Luca and Cindy, not crime lord and maid, not revolutionary statement and political liability, just us. When we returned to the compound, everything had changed. I wasn't the maid anymore. I was Mrs. Lucchese. The woman who'd saved the boss and married him anyway. Some still hated me. Some always would. But I walked through those marble halls with my head high, Luca's ring on my finger, and refused to disappear. I'd claimed my space, my love, my life, and I wasn't giving it back. 14 months into being Mrs. Lucchese, I sat through my first territory negotiation with the Santoro family. The dining room was all dark wood and expensive wine. The kind of power display designed to intimidate. Antonio Santoro barely looked at me. When he did, his gaze slid past like I was furniture, decorative at best, irrelevant at worst. I'd gotten used to it. The dismissal, the microaggressions wrapped in politeness. The way men like Antonio spoke directly to Luca while I sat beside him, as if I didn't exist, as if I hadn't earned my place at this table. What they didn't know was that invisibility had become my weapon. I listened, noticed, saw the cracks they thought they'd hidden, saw the inefficiencies they'd grown too comfortable with, too arrogant to fix. Your laundromat chain, I said to Luca later that night, reviewing the organization's books in his office. I'd started doing this months ago, understanding the business, seeing how money moved, where it came from, where it went. You're using them for laundering, but the operations are inefficient. Half are barely breaking even legitimately, which makes the laundering more obvious. Luca looked up from his own work, one eyebrow raised. They serve their purpose. They could serve it better. I pulled up spreadsheets on my laptop, numbers I'd been compiling for weeks. If you diversified, added legitimate services, improved the customer experience, actually made them profitable businesses, they'd be better cover. Real money masks fake money better than fake money trying to look real. He frowned, and I could see the internal struggle, pride warring with practicality, the old guard instinct to dismiss anything that challenged how things had always been done, especially coming from someone who'd been the maid just a year ago. Finally, show me the full plan. If it works, we'll implement it. It worked. Within 3 months, the laundromats weren't just cover, they were actually profitable. I'd hired better managers, upgraded equipment to compete with the corporate chains, created loyalty programs and mobile apps that brought in real customers who had no idea they were patronizing a mafia front. The legitimate income masked the illegitimate so well that even forensic accountants would struggle to separate them. We were washing money through businesses that were actually making money. It was brilliant in its simplicity. Juliana noticed first. The numbers from your restructuring, she said one afternoon, reviewing quarterly reports. We'd been working together more, her handling the restaurant fronts, me managing the service businesses. An uneasy alliance that had slowly, cautiously, become something like mutual respect. Profits up 23% in the first 3 months. That's impressive. People underestimate service industries, I said, pulling up more data. They think they're beneath notice. Small. Insignificant. But that's where real money flows. In small transactions multiplied by millions. And no one's watching because they don't think it matters. She studied me with those sharp Lucchese eyes. You're good at this. Better than most of the men in this organization who've been doing it their whole lives. 6 months after implementation, the results were even more undeniable. Profits up 40% across the legitimate businesses. Operations running smoother, more professional. Less exposure to law enforcement because everything looked cleaner, more legitimate. Harder to prove was anything other than what it appeared to be. Luca called a family meeting. "My wife," he said, his hand resting possessively on my shoulder as I stood beside him at the head of the table, "has done what none of you could. She saw inefficiencies you all missed because you were too busy dismissing her. Too busy thinking that someone who used to clean floors couldn't possibly understand business." Silence. Heavy and uncomfortable, thick with resentment. Then Salvatore spoke. "She's earned her place." Not everyone agreed. I could see it in the faces around the table, in the way some men refused to meet my eyes, in the muttered comments I wasn't supposed to hear. But enough did. And those who didn't had learned to keep their objections quiet. I'd found my purpose, not just as Luca's wife, but as a builder. Someone who saw possibilities others missed and had the intelligence to execute them. Someone who mattered, but violence was never far away. I was in a meeting with Luca and the Battaglia family when their underboss, a man named Enzo, made the mistake of testing boundaries. "Interesting choice, Lucchesi," he said, his eyes finally acknowledging me. "Bringing your wife to business discussions. Very progressive." The pause before wife said everything. The slight sneer in his tone, the way his eyes raked over me with barely disguised contempt, it made my skin prickle with familiar rage and humiliation. Luca's gun was out before I could blink. Pressed against the table, pointed at Enzo's chest with the casual ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Apologize to my wife." His voice was that deadly quiet that meant someone was about to die. Now, Enzo went pale, his bravado crumbling. "I didn't mean..." "Now, I apologize, Mrs. Lucchesi." The words tumbled out fast, terrified. "I meant no disrespect." I spoke out of turn. Luca didn't lower the weapon. His eyes, dark with gold flecks catching the light, found mine across the table, waiting for my judgment. I let the silence stretch. Let Enzo sweat. Let him feel the full weight of his mistake. Then I nodded once. The gun disappeared, but the message had been sent. Received. Understood. Later, alone in our bedroom, I confronted him about it. "I don't need you to fight every battle for me," I said. Not angry, but firm. Setting a boundary. "I can handle men like Enzo. I know you don't need me to." He pulled me close, his hands gentle despite the violence they were capable of. "But I'm going to anyway, because I love you. Because every time someone disrespects you, they're not just insulting my wife, they're testing me. Seeing if I'll defend what's mine. Seeing if I'm weak. I'm not a possession." "No." He kissed my forehead, my temple, my lips. "You're my partner, my equal, the person who made this empire stronger than it's ever been. That's exactly why I'll destroy anyone who tries to diminish you. Because you're not just my wife, you're the smartest person in the organization, and everyone needs to remember that." I looked up at him, this man who'd been dead when I found him, who'd given me power I'd never imagined having, who defended my worth as fiercely as I was learning to claim it. "We're quite a pair," I said. "We are." His smile was dangerous and tender at once. "You built an empire, Cindy. Not just survived my world, you transformed it, made it better, stronger, more sustainable." He was right. I wasn't the invisible maid anymore. I was Mrs. Lucchesi, empire builder, the woman who'd seen what everyone else had missed and had the brilliance and courage to capitalize on it, from invisible to indispensable. And I'd never felt more alive. 18 months after our wedding, I woke up and immediately ran for the bathroom. I made it just in time, throwing up violently, while Luca appeared in the doorway, concern etched across his face. "You haven't been eating," he said quietly once I'd finished, helping me up, wiping my face with a cool cloth. "You're exhausted by noon." "Cindy, talk to me. What's wrong?" I sat back against the cool tile, wiping my mouth with shaking hands. "I think I'm..." The words died as realization hit us both at the same moment. His eyes dark brown with gold flecks widening locked on mine. "Are you..." "I don't know. Maybe." My hand moved to my stomach unconsciously, protectively. "I haven't taken a test. Didn't want to hope. Get dressed." He was already moving, grabbing his phone, pulling out clothes for me. "We're seeing Dr. Fontana, right now." 20 minutes later, I was in the estate's medical wing, peeing on a stick while Luca paced outside like a caged animal. Dr. Fontana ran the test, then a blood test to confirm. His smile gave it away before he spoke. 9 weeks pregnant, healthy, everything looks perfect. Congratulations, Mrs. Lucchesi. The world tilted. 9 weeks. I was pregnant. We were having a baby. Luca stood frozen, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, wonder, terror, and something that looked like awe. You're sure? His voice cracked. Completely sure? Completely sure, doctor. Fontana handed me the results, smiling. I'll want to see you weekly, given the unique circumstances of your life. But everything looks perfect. Luca drove us home, but halfway there he pulled over abruptly, hands shaking on the wheel. Luca, he pressed his forehead against the steering wheel and broke, shoulders shaking, tears streaming down his face. The most powerful crime lord in the city, reduced to sobbing in a parked car on a random street. We're having a baby, he choked out between sobs. I unbuckled, moving to hold him as best I could across the console. We're having a baby, Luca. I never thought I'd have this. His hands found my still flat stomach, reverent and terrified. A family that's built on love instead of obligation and fear. A child who won't grow up the way I did, trained to kill before they're old enough to drive. You've given me everything, Cindy. Everything. I didn't even know I wanted. We built it together. I kissed his temple, held him while he cried. From ashes, literally. From the moment you opened your eyes in that crematorium. He laughed through the tears, pulling me as close as the car's console would allow. You've given me everything. A reason to live. A reason to be better. And now this. The family announcement was complicated. Juliana cried, actual tears streaming down her usually composed face, and hugged me for the first time since the wedding. A baby. God, a baby in this house again. After so many years of just death and darkness, Salvatore's smile was genuine, warm. Congratulations, boss. You'll make a good father, better than yours was. But Vittorio's concern was immediate and visible. The security risks with a child will be managed. Luca cut him off sharply. I'm not discussing this. My wife is pregnant. My child will be protected better than the president. End of conversation. Terrell's reaction was the best. I called him immediately after the family meeting, needing to hear his voice, needing his uncomplicated joy. I'm going to be an uncle. His voice went high with excitement. Sis, that's amazing. That's incredible. When can I visit? Can I be there when the baby comes? I want to be there. Yes, to all of it. I was crying again. Hormones, joy, relief that at least one person in my life was purely, simply happy, without calculation or concern. Your family, Terrell. You'll always be family. This baby will know their uncle. Also, Terrell added, and I could hear the grin in his voice. I'm teaching them everything. Basketball, video games, how to code, all of it. They're going to be the coolest kid. And sis, I'm graduating next spring. Associate's degree. First Anderson to graduate college. Mom would be proud. My heart swelled. She would be. And so am I. When I hung up, Luca was watching me from across the room. Something soft in his expression that I rarely saw. Your brother sounds happy and proud of himself. He is. He's growing up, building his own life. I smiled through the tears. We both are. Not anymore. Luca pulled me into his arms, his hand resting on my stomach. You have me, Juliana. Salvatore. We're building something, Cindy. A family that's chosen. And now we're growing it. 9 months crawled and flew simultaneously. My body changed, expanding with life in ways that were terrifying and miraculous. I'd never felt more powerful or more vulnerable. Luca was obsessed with my safety. Guards tripled around me. Every meal tested for poison before I could eat. He read every pregnancy book he could find, attended every appointment, talked to my growing belly like the baby could already hear and understand him. You're going to be so loved, he whispered one night, his hand on my stomach feeling our son kick. So protected. So different from how I grew up. You'll never know violence unless you choose it. You'll never be afraid in your own home. I promise you that. Labor started 3 days before my due date. Intense from the first contraction. Immediate. No slow build. My water broke during a business meeting with Juliana, and Luca practically carried me to the car. Don't you dare leave me, I gasped during a contraction that felt like it was tearing me in half. Never. His hand gripped mine so tight it hurt. I'm with you, all the way through this. 14 hours of labor. Luca never left, held my hand, breathed with me, whispered encouragement when I wanted to quit, when I screamed that I couldn't do it, when I begged for it to be over. And when our son finally emerged, screaming his fury at the world with healthy lungs, I watched Luca Lucchesi transform before my eyes. "He's perfect," he breathed, tears streaming down his face as the nurse placed our baby in his arms. Tiny, wrinkled, with dark hair like his father's and brown skin like mine, impossibly perfect features combining both of us. "He's absolutely perfect. He's ours." I reached for them both, exhausted and elated. Our miracle. Matteo. Matteo. We named him Matteo, gift of God, because that's what he was. A gift we didn't deserve but had somehow been given anyway. Later, when I was cleaned up and the baby was sleeping in my arms, Juliana visited. She held Matteo with practiced ease, and I saw the grief in her eyes for children she'd never have, maybe, for a different life she'd never get to live. "I was wrong about you," she whispered, still looking at the baby, not able to meet my eyes. "I thought you'd destroy my brother, make him weak, cost him everything he'd built, but you saved him, made him into something better than what our father created, something almost human again." "We saved each other," I said, because it was true. Terrell arrived that evening, walking into the hospital room like he owned it, immediately demanding to hold his nephew. At 21 now, graduating in a few months, he'd grown into a confident young man. "He's beautiful, sis, absolutely perfect." His eyes filled with tears as he cradled Matteo. "I'm going to teach him everything: basketball, video games, how to treat people right, how to stand up for himself. Everything." He looked at me. "Mom would have loved him so much, would have been so proud of both of us." She would have. Luca stood at the window, watching his family chosen and born gather around his son. When his eyes met mine, I saw everything we'd survived written there. The cremation, the blood, the racism and violence and impossible odds. The people who'd said we couldn't, shouldn't, wouldn't last. And now this, new life from the literal ashes of death. Our family, built against all odds, complete. 6 months after Matteo's birth, I sat in the compound's garden with my son in my arms, watching him discover his hands like they were the most miraculous things in existence. Luca sat beside me, his finger caught in Matteo's tiny grip, smiling in a way that still surprised me after more than 2 years together. Open, unguarded, genuinely happy. People said we were impossible. A black maid and a white crime lord, star-crossed and doomed. A relationship that would end in blood and tears. But they didn't understand. We were inevitable. I thought about the flames. How close they'd been that day, roaring and hungry, ready to consume the man who'd become my entire world. How the heat had seared my face as I'd pressed my hand against that viewing glass and felt warmth where there should have been death's cold. How I'd thrown myself at those crematorium doors, screaming words that changed everything. "Stop! He's still breathing!" I thought about our first kiss in his office, desperate and forbidden, both of us terrified of what we were feeling, of what it meant, of where it would lead. I thought about our wedding, walking down that aisle with Terrell's arm in mine, claiming space in a world designed to erase me, refusing to apologize for existing, for loving, for choosing. And now this, Matteo, our son. Living proof that love could build something new from ashes, that death didn't have to be the end of the story. "What are you thinking about?" Luca asked, his voice soft so as not to startle the baby, his dark eyes with their flecks of gold warm in the afternoon light. "How far we've come." I looked around the garden, manicured, beautiful, surrounded by walls and guards, and the constant awareness of danger. "I'm not invisible anymore." "You never were." His hand found mine, threaded our fingers together. "I just wasn't looking in the right places. None of us were." He was right. In the 2+ years since I'd stopped his cremation, I'd transformed from invisible maid to Mafia matriarch. The organization respected me now, genuinely, not just out of fear of Luca. I'd proven myself through intelligence, through results, through refusing to back down when challenged or dismissed. Profits were up 60% overall since I'd started restructuring operations, 23% in the first 3 months, 40% by 6 months, and continuing to climb as we expanded the model to more businesses. We'd diversified, legitimized where possible, made everything cleaner and more efficient and harder for law enforcement to penetrate. Some of the old guard had left, unable to accept the changes, or unwilling to answer to a black woman. But new blood had come in, people loyal to the vision Luca and I were building together. Not just an empire of fear, something more sustainable, more human, more worth protecting. Matteo made a sound, not quite a laugh, but close, and grabbed at Luca's tattoo where it showed above his collar, fascinated by the dark lines on his father's skin, the same dark hair covering his own little head. "He's going to have questions," I said quietly, the reality of it hitting me fresh. "About who we are, what we do, why some people look at us the way they do, why his skin is different from yours, and the same as mine, why some people hate that." "I know." Luca's jaw tightened, and I saw the fear there, the same fear I felt. Raising a biracial child in this world, in this life, it won't be easy. People will judge him, test him, try to use him against us. Nothing about us has been easy. No. He looked at me, and I saw everything we'd survived reflected in those dark eyes with their gold flecks. But we've faced everything else together. We'll face this too. We'll teach him to be proud of who he is, to never make himself small for anyone, to choose love even when the world says he shouldn't. Salvatore appeared at the garden entrance, stopping a respectful distance away. "Boss, the Santoro meeting in an hour. Mrs. Lucchese, Juliana asked if you could review the restaurant expansion plans when you have time." I nodded. "Tell her I'll be there after I put Matteo down for his nap." This was my life now. Meetings and empire building, motherhood and marriage, balancing the legitimate and the illegal with practiced ease, being seen, being powerful, being someone who mattered. After Salvatore left, Luca turned to me, his expression serious. "I was dead when you found me," he said, "in more ways than one." I know. I'd been going through motions for years, building power because that's what I'd been trained to do, what my father had beaten into me, never thinking about why, or what it was for, or whether there was anything beyond survival and control. His thumb traced circles on Matteo's tiny hand, so gentle despite the violence those same hands were capable of. "You gave me purpose. Gave me this. Gave me a reason to be better than what I was made to be." "We saved each other," I said, because it was the simple truth. "You made me visible. I made you human again. We built this together." Later that afternoon, Juliana arranged a family photo. "Something official for the compound's records," she said. But I knew it was more than that. It was acknowledgement, acceptance, documentation that this was the Lucchese family now, whether anyone liked it or not. We gathered in the main hall, Luca and I with Matteo, Juliana standing beside us with something almost like pride on her face, Terrell on my other side looking handsome and confident in his college graduation cap and gown. He'd insisted on wearing it for the photo. Even Salvatore in the background. Chosen family built from ashes and blood and impossible choices. The photographer positioned us, adjusted lighting, took shot after shot. But my favorite was the candid one she captured. Luca looking at me instead of the camera, his dark eyes soft, Matteo reaching for my face with his tiny hands, Juliana actually smiling, Terrell making faces to make the baby laugh. A family. Real and complicated and ours, built against every odd, every objection, every rational reason it shouldn't exist. That night, standing at our bedroom window with Luca's arms around me, I watched the guards patrol the grounds, our sanctuary, our fortress, the life we'd built brick by impossible brick. "Any regrets?" Luca asked against my hair. "Not one." I turned in his arms to face him. I went from invisible maid to Mafia matriarch, from stopping a cremation to building an empire. I found love in flames and a future in darkness. I found myself when I found you. That's poetic. I'm serious. I cupped his face, feeling the scratch of his evening stubble, seeing myself reflected in his dark eyes with their flecks of gold. I'd choose it again, every single time. Every hard moment, every racist comment, every death threat, every impossible choice. I'd choose it all again because it led me here. To you, to Matteo, to this life that's mine. He kissed me then, slow and deep, and full of everything words couldn't capture. Promise and passion, and the bone-deep knowledge that we'd chosen each other, and would keep choosing each other, no matter what came. You know what the best part is? I whispered against his lips. What? You were dead when I met you. Literally dead. About to be cremated. And look at us now. I smiled. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unlikely places. Sometimes the love that makes the least sense is the truest thing you'll ever know. Luca Lucchese was dead when you found him, he said, repeating my words back to me, his voice rough with emotion. But together, we've never been more alive. The sun set over the compound, painting everything gold and red and beautiful. Inside, Matteo slept in his nursery, surrounded by love and protection and all the security money and power could provide. Outside, guards maintained their watch, keeping threats at bay. Our story wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead, more threats, more moments when our different worlds collided in ways that hurt. Raising Matteo would bring questions we couldn't fully answer, challenges we couldn't fully prepare for. The organization would continue to test boundaries, society would continue to judge. Some people would never accept us, would always see our love as wrong, impossible, a betrayal of something they held sacred. But we'd face it all together. From ashes, we'd risen. From death's threshold, we'd built life. From impossible odds, we'd created something real and lasting and worth fighting for. I'd gone from invisible to indispensable. From nothing to everything. From the maid who prepared bodies to the woman who stopped a cremation and changed the course of an empire. And every single moment of it had been worth it. If you've made it to the end and haven't subscribed yet, this is the perfect time to become part of this family. Also, do tell me in the comments what struck you most about the story. What was the greatest lesson it left you? I try to read all the comments, and I love knowing how these stories move you. Finally, I just want to say, thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed it, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazy and even more intriguing than you can ever imagine. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.